Hello everyone. If you can hear me, type I can hear you in the chat. And if you can see me, type I can see you. How's everyone doing? Let me know your names if you're joining. Hi David, I can see you're in. Fab. Thank you, David. We're going to get started in just a minute. As you're joining, guys, feel free to say hello and type your name into the chat so that I know who I'm speaking to. Let me see if I can make that chat a little bigger. Okay. So, it's just about 6 o'clock, so I think we're going to get started. Couple of things before we get going. If you have around you, or if you could grab around you, something like a yoga strap, that's going to be super useful. A belt or a dressing gown cord works really well. Even if you don't use it in your usual practice, today one of the new postures that we're going to learn, this might come in handy, as well as one of these. So this is just filled with water. It's just a spray bottle that we use to water our plants. But if you don't have a spray bottle, don't worry about it. I've also used just a glass of water beside my mat, or a bottle of water nearby. That's going to come in useful, and you'll understand more once we get to that posture. And that's pretty much it. You may need something like a blanket, or I'm just going to use my rolled up yoga rug, just because in one of the postures you might need to place your heels on something elevated. Great, hiya guys. So we've got Danny and Sana, so hopefully you guys heard that. If you could have a strap nearby or something similar, a water spray bottle will be really useful. Or just a water bottle that you can kind of pour onto your hands. All will be revealed in the fullness of time. And just a few notes then before we get started. It's the first time I've ever done this kind of online workshop style. It's a bit easier when it's just an Ashtanga class because everyone kind of knows the postures already. But with this workshop, it's going to be a little bit more challenging than usual because obviously I can't see you to get your feedback on how you're doing with each of the postures. But let's just do our best. I just want to give you guys something fun to work on whilst we're all in a little bit of upside down at the moment. So let's see how it goes. So roughly the format of what we're going to do is we'll take half an hour or so to warm up. So we'll do a few Sun Salutations, we'll do the standing postures or a few of them, but we won't stay for that long. We'll just stay for 3 breaths or so, just to really get the body moving, make sure that we're warmed up thoroughly. And then we'll spend some time on the seated poses, not all of them again, but some of the seated postures from the beginning of the primary series, because I want us to really look at the movement patterns that are set up in those postures that really help to prepare you for the new poses that we're going to learn. So the 3 postures that we're going to look at today are Bhujapidasana, Kurmasana and Supta, which are kind of part of the same pose. And then we also will have a look, if we have time, at Garbha, Pindasana. And so if we have time, maybe we'll go a little bit further. Let's see what happens. But those are the 3 that I want us to really focus on. And so the way that the primary series is set up is it's such a way that each of the poses that you practice beforehand prepares your body and teaches you the movement patterns and the fundamentals that you need for the following posture. So it's quite an intelligent sequence. And therefore it's advised, or the general rule is, if you can roughly comfortably do up to Marichyasana D, you don't have to master the postures, but roughly up to Marichyasana D, you know that your body is pretty much ready to go on to the next posture. I'm not going to tell you that you can't practice the next poses if you can't bind in the poses, for example, or anything like that. Only you can, or a qualified teacher who knows your practice could really say. So it's totally up to you. And even if you don't think that you're ready fully for these poses yet, I'm going to give you some options to work on that are kind of modifications anyway. So there's definitely going to be something for you if you're not sure. This class is just donation based, so if you have the means, then you can donate whatever you can afford to my PayPal, which is linked below this video. And I think I've covered everything. So if you have any questions as we go through the workshop, just type them in the comments, and I will take a pause between some of the poses when I'm giving you guys a chance to practice what we're learning, and I'll check the comments for any questions. So if something does come up, I'll do my best to answer as we go through. So let's get started. Come up to standing at the top of your mat. And just to say, if you have practiced today already, then just make sure you take it a little bit easier. We do want to warm up the body, but you don't want to push yourself too far. So just take it easy. Samastitihi. Deep breathing through the nose with sound. And let's start with 3 rounds of Surya Namaskar A. Inhale, raise your arms, gaze up to the thumbs. Exhale to fold forwards. Relax the neck, let the head come down. Inhale, lengthen the spine. Exhale, step back, chaturanga. Inhale, upward facing dog. Exhale, downward facing dog. 5 deep breaths. One, and if you're used to practicing in the mornings, just take note of how different the body feels at this time of day. 3. Might be a good thing, you might feel a little bit more open. 4. And 5. Step to the front of the mat. Inhale, lengthen the spine. Exhale, fold forwards. Inhale, push back up. Gaze to thumbs. Samastitihi. Again, inhale, arms up, reach up. Exhale, fold, lower belly firm. Inhale, lengthen the spine. Exhale to chaturanga, coming down on the knees if you need. Inhale, upward dog. Exhale, downward dog. And again, 5 deep breaths with sound. 1. 2. 3. Make sure the lower belly is firm. 4. 5. Step or jump forwards. Inhale to lengthen. Exhale to fold. Inhale to standing. Samastitihi. Last one. Inhale, arms up. Exhale, fold. Inhale, lengthen the spine. Exhale, chaturanga. Inhale, upward facing. Exhale, downward facing. Drishti down the nose, spreading the fingers wide, gripping the mat and pushing through the hands. 2. Make the spine nice and long. 3. 4. 5. Step or jump forwards. Inhale, lengthen. Exhale, fold. Inhale, push through the feet as you come up. Samastitihi. Surya Namaskar B. Inhale, bend the knees, raise the arms, gaze up. Exhale, fold forwards. Inhale, lift the chest. Exhale, chaturanga, step or jump back. Inhale, upward dog. Exhale, downward dog. Right foot forwards, inhale, arms up. Exhale, chaturanga. Inhale, upward dog. Exhale, downward dog. Left side, inhale. Exhale, chaturanga. Inhale, upward dog. Exhale, downward dog. Breathing with sound. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Step or jump forwards. Inhale, lengthen. Exhale, fold forwards. Inhale, bend the knees. Bring the arms up, reach up to the ceiling. Samastitihi. Inhale, bend the knees, arms up. Exhale, fold. Inhale, lengthen. Exhale, chaturanga. Inhale, upward dog. Exhale, downward dog. Right foot forwards, inhale. Exhale, chaturanga. Inhale, upward dog. Exhale, downward dog. Left side, inhale. Reach up, gaze to thumbs. Exhale, chaturanga. Inhale, upward dog. And exhale, downward dog. One, 2, 3. Keep the pelvic floor lifted, lower belly drawn in. 4 and 5. Step or jump forwards. Inhale, lift the chest. Exhale, fold. Inhale, bend the knees, bring the arms up. Samastitihi, last round. Inhale, bend the knees, raise the arms. Exhale, fold forwards. Inhale, lengthen the spine. Exhale, step or jump back. Inhale, upward dog. Exhale, downward dog. Inhale, right foot forwards, arms up. Exhale, come back down to chaturanga. Inhale, upward dog. Exhale, downward dog. Left side, inhale. Exhale, chaturanga. Inhale, upward dog. And exhale, downward dog for the last 5 breaths. One, 2, 3, 4, 5. Step or jump forwards. Inhale, lengthen. Exhale, fold. Inhale, bend the knees. Reach the arms up. And Samasthitihi. Good. Padangusthasana and Padahastasana. Catch the big toes. Inhale, lift the chest. Exhale, fold. Knees can be soft. 5 deep breaths. 1. Good. So I want us to focus here on keeping the belly and the thighs close, even in contact if you can. That idea of sending the chest down to the legs, down to the knees, is going to be really helpful in Bhujapidasana, as it requires a little bit of openness in the hamstrings to get the chest through the legs. So just think about belly on the thighs and then keeping that contact. Start to straighten out the legs just as much as you can. Take 1 more deep breath. And inhale, lift the chest, straight arms, Padahastasana, exhale there. Inhale, slide the hands under the feet. Lift and lengthen the spine. And as you exhale again, we're folding, drawing the shoulders back gently, and then think belly on the thighs, lengthening the backs of the legs, but keeping close contact with the chest and the legs. So yours might look a little bit more bent, depending on the length of your hamstrings. Over time, you want to think of creating more length. I like to think of sliding the hamstrings up the backs of the legs. 1 more deep breath. Good. On your next inhale, lengthen the spine, lift the chest, and exhale there, empty the lungs. Inhale to standing, hands on the hips. Samasthitihi. Good. So the next few postures, we're just moving through for a few breaths each time. So inhale to Trikonasana, right foot out and turn, reach and bring the right hand down. Gaze to the left hand. 3 deep breaths. 1. 2. 3. Inhale, back to center. Exhale, turn the feet, reach and go down on the left leg. 1. Deep breaths. 2. 3. Inhale, back to center. Parivrita Trikonasana. Turn to the back. Fold forwards and bring the left hand across. Turning the heart and gaze up to the right hand for 1. You can use a block here if you like under your hand, or you can even just hold the shin. 2. And 3. Inhale, push off the feet, come to center and turn. Exhale, go straight down on the left side. Legs nice and strong. Bring the right hand across and turn the heart to face the side of the mat. Gaze up. 1. 2. Nice strong legs. 3. Inhale, come back to center. Samasthitihi. Uttita Parshvakonasana. Inhale, step out wide, arms wide. Exhale, turn the feet, bend the knee, bring the hand down and reach the top arm overhead. Palm facing down, look to the fingertips. 1. And spiral the heart up to the ceiling. 2. I also here want you to think of pressing the thigh against the arm. So keeping that close contact as you roll the chest up to the ceiling. And then inhale, nice strong legs, push back up to center. Exhale, turn, left side. So hand outside the foot, flat if you can reach, or on your fingertips, press the thigh out against the arm. And at the same time, turn the chest up to the ceiling. 1. 2. 3. Inhale back to center. Parivrita Parshvakonasana, turn to the back. Come straight into the full version of the pose if you know it. So back heel is down. And then we're twisting and reaching. Otherwise, just palms together in prayer. 1, 2, and 3. Good, strong legs. Inhale back to center. Exhale, turn, and same on the left side. One, gaze up to the hand. 2, and 3. Inhale back to center. Samastitihi. Good, so last standing pose that we're going to do, Prasarita Padottanasana. Inhale, right foot wide, hands on the hips. Let me just spin round. And exhale, hands between the feet. Inhale, push into the hands, lift the chest. And then exhale, fold. Try to place your head down between your hands. If not, just think of lengthening the spine down to the floor. 1. And again, bent knees is fine. You want to think about keeping the belly and the thighs close and then lifting the hips up from there, keeping the spine long. Inhale, lengthen and lift. Exhale to empty. Inhale to standing. And exhale there. Good. One more of the variations. So inhale, arms wide. Exhale, hands to hips. Inhale, lift the chest. And exhale, fold. Keeping the hands on the hips, elbows and shoulders back, heart down to the floor for 1, 2, and 3. Deep breath in, back to standing. Samastitihi. Cool. So let's come down to seated through the vinyasa. Inhale, arms up. Exhale, fold. Inhale, lengthen. Exhale, chaturanga. Inhale, upward dog. Exhale, downward dog. Look between your hands and step or jump to seated. Bring the legs out straight in front, Paschimottanasana. Catch the big, let's do 5 breaths in Dandasana to prepare. So inhaling, lengthening the spine. Exhale, keep the length. Don't drop down on the exhale. Instead, keep the spine long and maybe just drop the shoulders. So soften the shoulders on the exhale instead. 3. Feel the pelvic floor lifting away from the mat. Feel the lower belly strong, firm and active. And then keep all of those same pointers as you go into Paschimottanasana. So all you're doing here is leaning forwards, catching the big toes. Inhale again to create a little bit more lift in the chest. And then exhale, send the heart down towards the toes. Again, we can use this idea of just slightly bending the knees. Think belly on the thighs, or my chest is almost on my knees. And then keep that contact, neck relaxed, as you start to slide the heels forwards. Just be very mindful you don't go too far. It's easy to overstretch the hamstrings, but you want to feel like you're working them quite hard. One more deep breath in this variation. Good, then inhale to lengthen. Let's take the B version, hands around the feet, or if you can reach, catch the wrists. Inhale again, lift. And exhale, fold. Feel the pelvic floor lift, feel the lower belly. Even though we're folding, you want to keep them active as you reach the heart forwards. 3. 4. And 5. Inhale, lift the chest. And exhale, release the pose. Good. Take a vinyasa with me. Cross the legs into the chest. Inhale, lift. Exhale, jump the feet back and lower down to chaturanga. Inhale, upward dog. Exhale, downward dog. Jump to seated. Let's take Ardha Baddha Padma, Paschimottanasana. So the half lotus on the right leg. This is going to be one of the most important poses that we do because we're going to do a full lotus pose later or a variation. So let's go through the technique of the safe coming in and out of that pose. So bring the heel into the buttocks before you open the hip. It's going to sound like overkill the way I'm doing it so methodically, but over time the technique will be so imprinted into your brain that it won't seem methodical anymore. It will just seem like you're placing the foot. But to begin with, it's really good to take the heel in, open the hip, keep this position with the calf and the thigh close, so the knee joint is closed, scoop up the heel to navel and then to groin. So, such a key part of the primary series is starting to work deeply into the hip joint to create external rotation for the full lotus pose. So half lotus is a really good place to start. And if you need, you can hold your knee until the knee drops down to the floor over time. If you've got a really tight lotus here, just support your knee. This is fine. And work over time to let it come down as the tissues in the hip joint soften. If you have already the half lotus, we're going to bind with the foot, so holding onto the big toe. And even if you haven't got the full version of the pose yet, if you can, work on the bind, because the binding is also going to come up later. So you need to work on this internal rotation of the arm to catch the big toe. Let's do this pose properly. So inhale, lift the chest, and then exhale, folding forwards. One. If this pose is going anywhere other than the hip joint, I want you not to fold forwards. Come to a position where you don't feel pinching, you don't feel pain, and hold it there. And just let the body relax and open up in its own time. Usually if it's knee pain, it just means that you've got tightness in the hip joint. So as you're trying to open the joint, the stress is moving to the next weakest link, if you like, which is the knee. So just bring it back to a position where it doesn't feel painful. If you're folding, inhale, lift the chest. Exhale, gently release the pose. So take the knee out wide, foot on the floor, knee to center, and then open again. Let's do the left side. So no double vinyasas. Let's just do the half of the vinyasas today. So foot is on the floor and the knee is out wide with the knee joint closed. And then I try to keep that closed position as I scoop the heel up and over into the groin. Option to stay here, just hold the knee if you need. Otherwise, catch the big toe. Inhale, lift the chest, and exhale, fold forwards. And if you can't quite catch the big toe yet, what you're going to do is hold on to the foot and then hold the arm behind your back. But really work on this position. Again, the bind is one of the key parts of the primary series. And so we want to start walking down the hand as much as possible, eventually catching the big toe. Okay, one more deep breath in there, wherever you are. Exhale. Good, then inhale, lift the chest. Exhale, gently release the pose. So we take the knee out wide, foot on the floor, close the hip, and then open the knee. Take a vinyasa. Inhale, lift. Exhale, jump back. Inhale, upward dog. Exhale, downward dog. Step or jump through. Janu Shirshasana A, another one of these amazing poses that helps to create that external rotation in the hip that we need for the following poses that we're going to look at today. So for Janu A, the heel comes in, the knee goes out to 90 degrees. And to get the knee all the way to the floor, you need to have a good amount of length in these inner thigh muscles, the adductors, and also a good amount of external rotation in your hip joint. If it's not there yet, you can always place a block under the knee. That usually helps to just soften any tension in the knee joint. If you're feeling pain in the knee, try the block or a prop under the knee. If you're comfortable there, you can turn, inhale, lift the chest, and exhale, fold. If you're flexible enough, catch the wrist, left wrist, and take 5 deep breaths. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Inhale, lengthen the spine. Exhale, release the pose. Bring the knee back to center and then open the knee. Left side, knee comes in and out wide. So just take note here, if your knee is quite high off the floor, that's a good indication that you need more length in these muscles, the adductors, and possibly a little bit more external rotation in the hip joint. So work hard on your Janu Shirshasana A. Inhale, lift the chest, and then exhale, fold forwards. Take 5 deep breaths. And if you are finding that there's tension here around the hip, then definitely check out the workshop that I'm hosting on Saturday morning, live on YouTube. I'll give you the link afterwards, because we're going to focus really on hip opening safely and efficiently for lotus pose. 1 more deep breath. And inhale, lift the chest. Exhale, gently release, and let's do a vinyasa. Inhale, lift. Exhale to chaturanga. Inhale, upward dog. Exhale, downward dog. Marichyasana A. Step or jump to seated and take the legs out straight in front. Okay, Marichyasana A is another one of the key postures that it looks deceptively simple, but it really is training all of the right components for Bhujapidasana, which is the first pose that we're going to look at. It is the first new posture that we're going to look at today. So for Marichyasana A, we're going to bring the right foot into the sit bones. And then you want to leave yourself space here to come through. So one of the key parts of Bhujapidasana is being able to reach your chest in front of your hip or in front of the thigh bone. So this is where we set up that movement in Marichyasana A. So leave yourself the space and then start to reach as far forward as you can with your right arm. And you can even take the knee out to the side slightly and then wrap the arm, turning the palm upwards behind the back. If you can't bind yet behind the back, take a strap and throw it to yourself behind your back. And I want you to really work hard with the bind. So if you are using a strap here, try to walk your hands closer and closer, okay? Inhale to lift the chest and exhale to lean forward, send your heart towards your big toe. Now don't think about getting the head down, because that's not the movement we're after. The key movement here is sending the heart forwards and drawing the shin back to open the hip. So it's going from here to here, here to here. Take 2 more deep breaths. If you have the bind, try to hold on to your left wrist. If you can see that behind me, that's the full version of the bind. Good, and then inhale, lift the chest. Exhale, gently release the pose, and let's change sides. So left foot comes in, leaving that space. I like to just do a hand spread wide. That's roughly the right space for me. Keep the big toe, the base of the big toe grounded. So what I see a lot is people letting the grounded foot lift up like this out to the side. You're going to miss out on some of the hip opening if you let that happen. So think of pressing the big toe down into the floor, especially the base. Right arm comes through and then wraps with the palm facing up behind the back. Catch the right wrist or throw yourself a strap. And then let's work on that movement in the hips of sending the chest beyond the thigh. Inhale, lift the chest. And exhale, start to lean forwards. Send your heart to your toes. Focused on the hip though. 1. 2. Try not to let the big toe base lift up, pressing down through that point. 3. See if you can find the sensation in the hips. Another cue that you might want to play with, and it sounds counterintuitive at first, is actually sliding the foot along the mat forwards. So it sounds counterintuitive because you're actually trying to send the foot that way or take the whole leg that way. But if you push forwards with the foot, you start to engage the muscles that you're trying to stretch. And then you can release that contraction. So kind of pushing the foot forwards and relaxing. Pushing and hold for a few seconds and then relaxing. And sometimes that gives you a little bit more space in the hip, those contractions and releases. Okay, let's inhale, lift the chest. And then exhale, release the pose. And then vinyasa. Inhale, lift. Exhale to chaturanga. Inhale, upward dog. And exhale, downward dog. Jump to seated. Marichyasana B. Okay, so for those of you who are not doing half lotus yet, what I want you to do is bend your left knee and place the sole of the foot underneath your right thigh. So the foot is just resting relaxed under the thigh. If you are doing half lotus, then the same as before, we take the knee wide, we scoop the heel up to the navel and across. So the knee joint stayed closed that whole time and it feels super safe, super secure. There's no twisting happening, so there's no pain in the knee. Okay, then we're bending up the right foot and taking the same position as Marichyasana A. So the knee comes out to 45 degrees and then we're taking the same bind. So it's exactly the same pose except that we've got this handicap of the knee in half lotus. So try to find the left wrist behind the back. Inhale, lift the chest and exhale, send the chest down, send the head down to the floor. 5 deep breaths. So here we're working doubly hard on the hips. We've got the left hip in deep external rotation for the half lotus. And then we've got this hip, we're trying to send the chest forwards again and drawing this shin backwards to create that movement of sending the heart beyond the thigh. And you're going to see why that's so important when we come to the next few poses. Try to breathe. One more deep breath. And inhale, lift the chest. Exhale, release the pose. Let's change sides. So first extend the leg, then take the foot to the floor, keeping the knee joint closed, and then we close the hip. And same on the right side, or rather now we're doing the pose on the left side, so we bend the right knee, take it either under the foot, under the thigh, with the toes facing out to the side, or if you have the half lotus, same way, coming in with care. And the left foot comes in. Again, my foot isn't too close to the other leg. I leave myself space here so that my chest can come down. So again, that same action of sending the chest in front of the thigh and then wrapping the arm round. The palm turns up, so you internally rotate the shoulder and then try and catch your right wrist behind the back. Otherwise you're throwing yourself a strap or just holding the fingers, but working hard on the bind. So it just seems like a really trivial part of the posture. And to a certain degree, you could say it is, until you get to one of the next postures that we're going to work on, which is Supta Kurmasana, where you want to bind behind your back with the fingers. So work hard on the bind, with care, with gentleness. Inhale, lift the chest. Let's do 3 more breaths because you've probably been in that pose for a while now. Exhale, lower down. And if you want, you can use the same contractions. So you can think about dragging the foot forwards. It's almost like you're pushing the floor away. The foot doesn't move because it's grounded, but by engaging those muscles to extend the leg, you actually create tension in the muscle that you're trying to stretch. So you do it for a few seconds, and then you release, and you see if you can sink down a little bit lower. You strengthen the muscle by pushing, and then you release. Okay, inhale, lift the chest. And exhale, gently release. The leg comes out in front. Release the other leg and take a vinyasa. Exhale to chaturanga. Inhale, upward dog. And exhale, downward dog. And jumping through, we're going to do Navasana. Do we need to do Marichyasana C and D? I don't think we'll focus on the twists today. So yeah, let's move on to Navasana. So we're going to start here and we're going to break it down because again, one of the poses relies on a single technique in Navasana that nobody really ever taught me until recently. And it makes this posture a whole lot easier. So what we're going to do is bend the knees and point the toes, gently squeezing the feet together, just creating a little bit of tension on the inner legs. And then rather than thinking of a really lovely straight back with a chest nice and wide like this, I want you to actually think of leaning backwards just behind your sit bones, so just behind those bony bits of the bottom of the buttocks. And I want you to think of pulling in your belly so hard that the lower back, very lower part of your back rounds. So it's like a boat that has a kind of circular bottom rather than just a V-shaped bottom. Circular bottom makes it much more stable. And then you can lift the chest from there, but keeping the lower back round. Let's just take 3 breaths with the legs extended. 1, all the focus on the lower belly. 2, and 3. Cross the legs, inhale, lift. And exhale, back down. 1 more round. So you can either keep the legs here, but keep thinking slightly rounding the lower back by pulling the lower belly in. And then inhale, lift up, exhale, back down. Okay, take a vinyasa, and then we're going to start with our first new pose. Inhale, upward dog, and exhale, downward dog. Okay, from here, looking towards your hands, I want you to step or jump around your hands, so the feet come just outside of the hands. That's going to look like this, 1 foot and then the other. Or, if you're confident enough, you can try a few times. Jump. The feet as wide and in front of the hands as you possibly can. So just try that 1 more time. Slightly turning the knees and the toes out. And then landing lightly. Good, and from here you're going to sit down, lowering your hips into a squat position. Now, if this is not comfortable for you at all, this is where our little rolled up blanket, or I've got my Mysore rug, is going to come in handy. You're just going to, if you feel like you need to lift your heels to come into a squat, try just placing the heels on something like this, a little prop, and then bring your palms together in the center of the chest. Good. Take a breather. And I'm going to talk you through what we're going to do next. You can stay in this squat for now, and we're working on just the same action that we did in Marichyasana A. So it's getting the chest through and up. So it's coming, so rather than rounding the back and leaning backwards, we're thinking of lifting and extending and bringing the chest and the rib cage through the thighs. Hope that makes sense. And then let me demonstrate the next posture, which is Bhujapidasana. So Bhujapidasana means arm pressure pose. So I want you to remember that when we're actually doing the posture, because it gives you the key actions that need to happen in this pose in order for it to be successful. So arm pressure pose. And the main, if you need to come out of your squat, that's fine. I am, because otherwise I'm going to be out of breath. The main thing that's going to limit your Bhujapidasana is your hip external rotation, which is why all of those postures that we just did in the primary series, like the half lotus, the Janu Shirshasana A, and also Marichyasana A, that's why they are so important to work hard on so that you can master Bhujapidasana. So it's hip external rotation. It's also an arm balance, so a little bit of strength in the arms is also needed, but it's not so difficult because you do have the legs wrapped around the arms, so they kind of act as a little bit of a bind. Let me show you so that you know what I'm talking about. So we're going to jump the feet around the hands, and then we're going to come into that position with the chest and the thighs that we talked about in our forward folds. So it's where the thighs are close to the chest, so that you can then do this. I wrap my hand, my shoulder under my knee, hand on the floor. Same on the other side, shoulder under the knee, hand on the floor. Then I start to lower my hips down onto the tops of my arms. So I'm not really doing much here, but then I start to shift the weight into my hands, squeeze the legs against the arms. So there's that arm pressure pose, and the feet just hover off on their own. So you can touch the feet, you can cross them. Full version of the pose is crossed and then pointed, and try to hold here for a few deep breaths. And then to come out, you can just take your feet back and come down into your squat. So try that with me. Let me talk you through it as we go so that you have the instructions happening real time. So the feet come out wide-ish towards the sides of your mat. And then we're lowering down so that the chest is close to the thighs. And then start to lift. Do you see what I do? I just lift my left heel and lift the leg, getting the shoulder underneath the knee, hand under the heel. Same on the other side, lift the shoulder under the knee and then hand underneath the heel. So my hands are active. I'm pushing the floor away with the hands, and then I lower my weight down onto the arms. So there's like a little shelf with the arms. They're not straight, they're bent. Then I start to push the floor away. And as I squeeze my knees against my arms, the feet come up off the floor. See if you can touch them. Cross right over left, but don't let go of your squeezing. 1, 2, 3. Keep squeezing and bring the heels in towards your center. 4 and 5. Release. Take the right foot back, left foot back, and then gently come down. Okay, bring the hands out in front and just step the feet back so that you're in a tabletop position. We're just going to release off the lower back. You probably found that, or you probably noticed that that position is quite flexed, so your spine is rounded, and it can sometimes feel a little bit tender coming out. So let's just gently move in your tabletop position from flexion, so rounding gently, not excessively, into the lower back, and then gently come into extension. So it's like you're tipping your tailbone up to the ceiling, keeping the belly engaged, and then go back to flexion, just tucking the tailbone under, and then back into extension. It should feel quite releasing, quite relieving. One more time into flexion, and into extension, just gently, not a big movement. Keep the belly engaged, and then gently sit back on the heels. If your wrists are feeling tender, just give them a few moments to shake them out. Unless it's really quite strong pain, it's not unusual to feel quite tense in the wrists here because you might not be used to taking so much weight on the wrists whilst they're flexed. So just be mindful, give them a break. Okay, if you have any questions to ask me now, now's the time to just go into the comments, and we're going to try it one more time. This time we'll try the next stage of the pose, okay? So instead of just hovering with the legs crossed, we're going to try to lower down, okay? If you have questions, get them in there and I'll answer them once I've demonstrated this part of the posture. So same again. Make sure that your hands are gripping the mat and you're not just flopping with the wrists. And jump the feet around. Lift up the shoulders, lift the legs up to get the shoulders under the knees. Lift up under the knees, hands under the heels, so you're standing on your palms, keeping a nice strong grip with the hands. Gently lower your hips down, push the floor away, and squeeze the legs against the arms, crossing the legs and pointing the toes. Then we're going to lean forwards and place the head gently down on the ground. 5 breaths here. Inhale, back up, and then take the legs back to the beginning. Got it? This is a really hard bit, and it requires a lot of strength to lower down without collapsing. So first stage is to lower the head, and then only once you have that bit sorted, you can start to lower down with the chin. So have a go of that now. I'm going to keep an eye on the comments. I'll talk you through it again. So we come into our low position, so the belly is close to the knees or close to the thighs. Same exact way, we lift the heel, take the shoulders underneath the knees. So the knees are high up on the shoulders. Stand on top of your hands and lower the hips down onto your shelf, onto your arms. Push the floor away. Squeeze the knees in against the arms and cross the feet right over left. If you need to, keep your toes on the floor, that's fine. Start to walk your feet back and gently head comes down to the floor. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then inhale back up. Take the legs round and lower back down. Whew. So after that, again, give your wrists a break. You can come into child's pose. Stretch out the arms. Maybe take the hands back and just let any tension release. And then again, we're going to come back up and just take our spine, the lower back especially, through those gentle spinal movements. So on your tabletop, still with the arms quite strong, it's quite engaged. Gently lift the tailbone up, keeping the belly engaged. So you don't just crunch the lower back, you're actually controlling it with the strength of the bandhas. And then gently tuck the tailbone under and find some flexion. Just moving through that extension and flexion. Again, should feel quite relieving. Each time, if it feels good, taking it maybe a little bit deeper, but not overdoing it. We're not looking for a really deep back bend. We're just mobilizing those joints that were really in a flexed position. Good, and once you're feeling pretty good, you can come back onto your heels. So questions, comments, let me know how you got on with Bhujapidasana, and then we'll move on now to Kurmasana and Supta Kurmasana. So let's take a vinyasa just to reset. So come onto all fours and lower down to chaturanga on your exhale. Inhale, upward dog. Exhale, downward dog. And again, we're going to do the same movement, jumping the feet around the hands. So just watch me to begin with. You can jump onto your knees and sit back and relax. And let me show you Kurmasana. So Kurmasana means turtle pose. So as you're going to notice when I do it, this time we have quite a rounded back. So you've got to be very mindful of your discs in the back, so the intervertebral discs that sit between the joints of the spine. Flexing them is fine, it's a healthy part of movement, but flexing them and then loading them is where sometimes accidents can happen. So don't let people adjust you strongly in this pose, because that's one of the problems that could happen. So let me talk you through it if I can whilst I demonstrate. We're going to jump again and come into the pose in the same way, transitioning through Bhujapidasana. So pushing, and then this time you don't need to cross the legs, you just sit the hips down on the floor. Then I'm going to slide my hips back and gently take the arms out to the sides. Good. So then we're straightening the legs as much as possible And from here, this is the work of the pose. So we're trying to extend the spine, even though you'll probably notice I'm in quite a rounded position. Work on lengthening the spine whilst you're here and squeezing the legs against the shoulders, against the ribs. So we still have that same movement in Bhujapidasana of squeezing the legs in and extending the legs. Taking 5 breaths, and then we're going to come out. So from here, you would just bend the knees, let the hands come to center, and then take a breather. So yours might not look anything like mine. Let me show you what maybe the first time doing this pose would look like. So you might just take your knees out to the side, a little bit wider, and your shoulders might not come all the way under. Take them as far through under the knees as you can, and then don't worry if the knees are bent. Just try to get comfortable here, squeezing the knees in against your shoulders, against your ribs. And then over time, as the hamstrings relax, you can start to extend the legs. Try and hold here for 10 breaths. The proper version is just 5. But when you're first starting out, it can feel like it takes a while to move into this pose. Staying a little bit longer is a really good way to work a bit quicker into the posture. So let's try that one together. You just have a quick look at the comments. Well done, David. Just flopping when you're going forward. Okay, another good thing to do in Bhujapidasana when you're lowering down, if you have the fear of lowering down, you could also place something soft like a cushion just in front of you as you're lowering down, and then it removes some of the fear of face planting, if it is a fear. Some people don't care so much. Okay, let's try Kurmasana together. So we're coming in the same way. We're lifting the heel, shoulders come under, lifting the heel, shoulders come high on the shoulder, knee comes high on the shoulders, standing on the hands, lowering down, shifting the weight into the hands, and then lowering the hips gently down. From here, we just start to shuffle the hips back and gently lower the legs, the heels down to the floor. The arms come either out to the sides. If that feels like too much, try just behind you a little bit. And then start to straighten the legs as much as you can. Don't go too far too soon. Maybe take a few breaths at each different stage. So here you are, you take a few breaths, you squeeze the legs against the shoulders, and then you wriggle a bit deeper. Take a few breaths, try to reach the chest forwards, neck relaxed, and then move a little bit deeper. Take a few breaths, squeeze the knees against the shoulders, against the ribs, and then sink a little bit deeper, relaxing the head. If the legs are almost straight, you might take your chin forwards if you have the space. And relax. Let's come gently out of the pose. So bring your heels further back towards you so that you have space to bring the arms back to center and then gently come back up. Whew. So again, in this posture, we're going into deep flexion of the spine. And so when you come out, just be very mindful. We usually do a vinyasa straight away after the posture, but if you are feeling very tender, just be mindful and take a few extra breaths or a few extra moments to move back into more vigorous movement. So I prefer just to do a cat-cow, just gently moving with the bandhas switched on. Don't let go of the lower belly when you're moving into extension. Mobilizing the joints of the lower back. And then once you feel ready, just sit back on your heels. Okay, let's try Supta Kurmasana. So we've just done Kurmasana, now we're doing Supta Kurmasana, which means reclining tortoise. So this is where you may need a strap or something like a small towel to pass yourself behind your back. It's basically exactly the same that we just did in Kurmasana, but this time, instead of squeezing the legs against the body, we're going to let them roll out to the sides into external rotation. So again, that pattern comes up from the primary series where you need to have this opening of the hips in order to be able to do these poses comfortably. I'll just come into it from here. So as we were just doing, the shoulders are under the knees. And then instead of my legs going forwards, I'm going to let the knees come out to the sides and then take the hands behind the back. I can easily bind because I'm scrawny, like a teenage boy. And then you bring the feet together, try to touch the toes and rest the forehead down on the floor. Okay, so the first challenge here is binding. So that's why I said you could use a strap here and just throw it to yourself behind your back. And then once you've got your bind, just start to wriggle the feet towards each other. Do you see how my knees are not close in? I'm letting them come out to the sides. The more you let them roll out, the harder it is to bind. But the more you let them roll out, the more comfortable the pose is. So find a happy balance. And take 5 breaths. So at first, maybe you just keep the feet somewhere here and you're holding the strap, and try working for 10 breaths to create that opening in the hip joint and reaching the heart forwards. Even though you feel rounded, you're trying to kind of counterbalance that by reaching the chest forward. So have a go. You can see also how these postures need a lot of hamstring flexibility. Even though the knees are bent, to come under with the shoulders is quite a big ask for the hamstrings. So that's again why the Pidasana, our forward folds, Paschimottanasana, are all really important parts of the sequence. Let's give it a go. So you could have your strap beside you, and let's come in just as if we were just from here. So you have your feet slightly wider than your hips, knees bent. And then just in the same way, we're going to wrap the shoulders under the knees, lift the leg, wrap the shoulders under the knees, and then I kind of lean to one side to get my right hand behind the back. I lean to the other side to get my left hand behind the back. I clasp the fingers, but you could use a strap here. And then once I'm in that position, I can start to bring the toes together. Eventually you'll be able to cross the legs behind the head, but we won't do that version today. We'll just go to there. And then you can bring your hands forwards with the knees still under the shoulders, still on top of the shoulders. Push into the floor and try to lift your legs, and then lift your hips up, push the floor away, and take the legs back to Bakasana, crow pose. If that sounded crazy and impossible to you, don't worry. I'm going to try and talk you through it step by step. This one might not happen today. This transition might take a little bit longer to get, but if you have it in your mind of where you're going, then it's going to start to happen day by day. So we were in Kurmasana, Supta Kurmasana, sorry. And then arms release. I take my feet just a little wider so that I have the space to get my hands forward. And then using my hands, I gently push myself up, bring the hands closer to the sit bones, and then I lift up. So your legs don't have to be straight, they can be bent here, and I'm squeezing my knees against the arms. Straighten the legs if you can, and then lift the hips up. Take the feet back into crow pose, Bakasana. From there, we jump back. Inhale, upward dog, and exhale, downward dog. Jump to seated, and take a break. So again, don't worry if that transition out of the posture is going to come a little bit later probably, if this is your first time practicing it. But you can work on that first bit, the first movement of lifting the legs up. So let me know in the comments how you're doing. Let me know if Kurmasana happened. Did you get the bind behind your back? Could you use a strap to bind? Could you touch your toes together at the front? These are all kind of mini milestones that just indicate that you're kind of moving closer to the full versions of the poses. Good stuff, guys. Let's go through. If you've just been doing that with me, then just take that spinal movement again, gently moving from extension, keeping the belly drawn in, and then gentle flexion. Extension and flexion. Extension. And then maybe you might feel inclined, if you do, just to twist a little bit side to side. If that feels good, you can look around towards your hips as you take them out one way and then the other. So you're just bringing a bit of lateral movement to the lower back, just very gently, very mindfully, and then sit back on your heels. Hopefully you're still with me. So that was Supta Kurmasana, and then I showed you the transition, but again, just don't worry about the transition at first. Just work on letting the hips open up, finding the bind behind the back, and finding the breath in the pose, because once you find the breath, everything else starts to slot into place much more comfortably. We've got one more pose to look at, which is Pindasana. Okay, this is where your water bottle or your spray bottle is going to come in handy. So you can just take any cross-legged position that's comfortable for you. So firstly, if you're not doing full lotus pose yet, then just don't worry, because I'm going to show you an option to do it without. In fact, maybe we'll do it without the lotus pose first. Yes, let's do that, and then you can move on to the full version if you're feeling good. So Pindasana, we're going to cross the legs and bring the shins so that they're in front of us, like almost parallel with the mat. Then wrap the arms under and see if you can touch your fingers to your forehead. So this is stage one with no lotus pose. So you can stay here for 5 breaths. And then what we're going to do is roll around in a circle 9 times and come back to center. So let me show you what that looks like. Oh, and just to mention here, the key movement that we've practiced for Pindasana is rounding the lower back. So just like we did in Navasana, where we said draw in the lower belly muscles to create that little bit of rounding in the lower back, that movement is going to be key in Pindasana. Because as we roll backwards and forwards along the spine, if you don't have the rounding in the lower back by creating that suction of the lower belly, you'll find that you kind of thunk down and thunk back up. So you want to try and get a nice smooth round in the back, and that will help you to roll around smoothly. Let me see if I can show you what that looks like. The modified version is actually harder, so just bear that in mind and forgive me when I do this demonstration. So what we're going to do, you can start just by rocking backwards and forwards, backwards and forwards, and then we're going to start to rock round in a circle. This is so much harder than the normal version. And keeping the fingers glued to the forehead, we come back up. So yeah, it's much easier if you can keep your fingers glued to the forehead, because then you have a little bit of a bind in the pose, so it makes it it makes it more challenging for you to lose the posture because you have this nice tight bind. So shall we have a go? Just try with me a few times, rocking forwards and backwards, and try to really find that lower back rounding, because you'll notice if you don't have it, it feels really clunky when you roll backwards. So fingertips to the forehead, draw the knees in, round the lower back, rock back, and inhale up. Rock back, inhale. Good. Okay, so if you have that, start to rock round in a circle. And this is one of those poses that you've just kind of got to go for. But the only tip that I could give you, the first is round the lower back by squeezing in the lower belly. The second is, okay, there's three. Second is exhale to go back, inhale to come back up, and you really have to use your inhalation to help bring you up. And then the third is as you go down, because you're going round in a circle towards the right, as you go down, you're kind of going down on your left side of your spine, inhaling up the right, exhaling left, inhaling right, exhaling left. So there's this alternating lowering down on the right side of the spine and then coming up on lowering down on the left, coming up on the right. And then as you come up, you shift the pelvis. So have a go a few times in a circle, trying to rock round with the fingertips touching the forehead. Good job, Pidasana, David. Don't say there's no way. Where there's a will, there's a way. Egle. That's definitely, proportions play a part. But if you work more on your hip opening, lotus pose workshop on Saturday morning, then you'll find that, yes, you'll be disadvantaged if you have shorter arms and if your proportions aren't like a scrawny teenage boy. But if you work more in the hip opening, it will suddenly become possible. Okay, let me know how you got on with Garbha Pindasana, stage 1. And see if you can do 9 times in a circle. And then come back to center. At this point, I'm going to just roll up my leggings so that I can show you the second stage. So this stage is only suitable if you have a very comfortable very comfortable lotus pose. And you'll see why. It's also much easier if you have shorts on, but in the winter I just get too cold, so I just tend to roll up my leggings. You can see how complicated it is to choose a pair of leggings that works for the primary series. They have to be able to roll up to here. And then I'm going to take my water bottle here. So for the full version of Garbha Pindasana, it's definitely going to depend on, firstly, your proportions, because if you have thicker, chunkier legs or more muscular arms, you're going to struggle to get the bind. It's not necessary to do this pose. You're not going to attain enlightenment. So don't worry about that. And the second thing is the tightness of your lotus. So the tighter you can be in your lotus pose, the easier it's going to be to get your legs through and the more comfortable you are in lotus as well. And then thirdly is the texture of your skin, which sounds a bit funny, but that's how we're going to get around it, is with a water bottle or with any water in a jar, in a glass beside your mat. Okay, so Garbha Pindasana, let's do this. So we're going to come into a very tight lotus. So the right foot comes in, goes out to the side. I scoop the heel up and across, and then same on the left leg. Okay, once I'm in a comfortable lotus, I'm going to go to town. So what I'm doing is I'm spraying water on the insides of my calves and my legs, between my legs. So you can see why it's better if you have shorts on. And then I'm also going to get the key areas like my elbows, my wrists and my fingers. And for the first few times that you do this pose, and I still do it, really soak yourself so that you have as much lubrication as you can. It's going to be easier to come into the pose. Helps if you have someone like a teacher to help you come through as well. But since I'm on my own, no problem. And then you bring your knees up and you try to, I haven't got enough. Wriggle your hands and your arms through your legs. So loads of water, don't be shy. And right hand goes in first. Go as far through as you can. Elbow needs to come through, otherwise it's really uncomfortable. And then the other side. And hands to the forehead, if you can. Oh, sorry, for A, we place the hands around the cheeks, but just go as far as you can for the first time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 here. And then the fingertips go to the forehead and they are glued to the forehead, so don't let them move. We're going to do exactly the same that we did in the previous example. So we draw the lower belly in, exhale down. And then Kukkutasana, we go straight up into an arm balance. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 here, and then lower down. You guys tell me in the comments how many of you are doing the full lotus so that I know how long to spend on this example. So if you are, then you can prepare, get into your lotus pose and start to wet your legs. David, can't quite get your hands to your forehead, no problem. So usually in both of the options, if you're struggling to get the hands to the forehead, it's a sign that you need more hip flexion. So it's postures like this, half lotus of course, and any kind of posture where you're in external rotation and then you're bringing the thigh and the knee up to the chest. That's the movement that's missing there. So you could work on this pose. This is a really good one. And if you are doing the half primary series, work on your half lotus poses really carefully, and that will start to happen. I assume that means you're not doing the full lotus pose yet, which is fine. And how are the rest of you guys, how are you doing with the full version of the lotus? If not, you can just work on the modified version as long as you need. And then if you're doing the modified version, after you've done, so for the vinyasa, it's 5 breaths, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, rock 9 times in a circle. And then on the last rock, you would then release your hands and you'd lift up like that. So just as if you were doing a vinyasa, instead of Kukkutasana, where your hands are through your arms, you would just lift up like so, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh yeah, I agree, David. So David says he is doing full lotus. He just tried the modification version and it is much harder in many different ways than the full version. I'm not sure why it's harder. It's easier to get your forearms, your fingers to your forehead, but maybe it's something to do with the bind. So yeah, just be mindful. Remember, if you don't have the full lotus yet, don't force it. It's one of those things that can take a while for some people. It's also, let me just tell you quickly that it has a lot to do with the orientation of your hip joint. So I'm lucky in that my hips face out to the side. So you can see when I let my legs go, my feet are almost to the floor. And I can really externally rotate my hips and my legs quite widely without much effort. Some people, their hip joints are facing more forward. So it takes a lot more for them to get the external rotation to come into lotus pose. And there's definitely some people that won't ever come into the lotus pose because of that. More likely that you'll be somewhere in the middle and that you just need to work more on lengthening the insides of the legs, stretching as well the fronts of the thighs so that you can close the knee joint so you can come in and out without pain. And then also these muscles on the outside of the hip as well. So doing poses like this where you're flexing and you're drawing the chest and the thigh closer together. All those 3 different groups of poses are going to help to get you into the full version. Egle, yeah, hands through. It sounds crazy. I'm sure that there are some people that teach taking the left arm through first. So you could try that if you feel like you're not getting anywhere with the right hand first. The reason I do right hand first is because it's the harder one. So I like to get that one through and I know that I'm secure, and then the left one is easier. But I know that some people teach just get this one through first. I wouldn't know how to do that, but if you wanted to try and experiment, you could let me know how it goes. So you guys who aren't quite comfortable in the half lotus yet, definitely come to my workshop on Saturday, because I've got loads of different ways of working up to the pose, and not just for lotus pose, but for hip opening in general, because I had such problems with my hips. You know, I was saying that I have that external rotation of the hips, like face outwards naturally. And even though it sounds like I'm lucky, it causes me a lot of problems in other areas. And so I've worked very hard on my hips to be able to sit in lotus pose again without pain, to be able to do lots of the postures from the primary series that we've done with these hip problems. So I've got a lot to share on that topic, and would love to share it with you if you are working on your hip opening. So let me just check what Sana has said, and then we're going to start to cool down. Good. Having fun watching where they'll go. Yeah, it's a journey for sure. Okay, let's cross the legs and just take an easy vinyasa. Down to chaturanga. Inhale, upward dog. And exhale, downward dog. Step or jump through. And let's just lay down on the back. We've been doing a lot of flexion in those postures, so rounding of the back. I just wanted to take us into some gentle extension again. So we've done the cat-cow, but let's just go into a gentle bridge pose. And don't push it to your maximum today, just taking it up as far as feels comfortable. Just getting a little bit of opening in the back. And then exhale down. And inhale back up. Taking it into extension of the spine. 2. You can interlace your fingers if that feels good. 3. 4. And 5. Exhale, slowly roll down. One last time. Inhale, lift up. Interlace. 1, 2, 3, 4, and release the hands, slowly roll down and bring the knees into the chest. Let's rock gently back up. Take a vinyasa. Step or jump through. And let's take the last 3 finishing poses of the primary series. So just crossed legs is fine. If you're taking full lotus, then you can take full lotus here. Arms behind the back. Inhale, lift the chest. Exhale, gently come forwards. And let the head come down towards the floor. 1, deep breathing. 2, let the breath release the tension in the back. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Inhale, come back up. Hands to the knees for 10 breaths. Jnana Mudra. Find the extension in the spine. So it's more subtle when we're stacked up against gravity, but see if you can create space in the lower back by reaching the spine up through the crown of the head, supporting that movement with the bandhas. Using the inhale to carry the prana up the spine. And the exhale to stay tall but drop the shoulders. And then release. We're going to get to skip Utplutihi today. We're just going to take it back to Chaturanga. One last vinyasa to iron out the creases. Just take it gently. Inhale, upward dog. And exhale, downward dog. Step or jump. And then lay down on the back. And just take a few minutes, just resting with no effort whatsoever. So just let the body flop. And just notice which areas of the body are feeling maybe tingling from the hard work that you've done. If there's any areas of heat. If there's any areas that are holding on to tension. And see if you can give them permission to soften. Start to remove your fingers and toes and bring the life back into the body. Just gently waking yourself up in your own way. And we'll meet back in a seated position when you're ready. Thank you very much for joining me, you guys. If you have any questions and you want to leave them in the comments now, then please feel free. I'll stick around for a bit longer. And I hope you enjoyed this workshop and that you found some helpful tips and tricks for those new poses. Truly the best advice that I could probably give is to work hard on the half primary series poses and really feel the unlocking of those different secret movements that are happening in the body. And then those Bhujapidasana, Kurmasana and Pindasana, they automatically kind of lock into place. Everything starts to make sense. So even though sometimes you feel like this is a boring pose, I don't want to do Marichyasana again, think about what it's teaching you and which movements it's trying to create in your body, and focus on the breath. So I always say to my students, if you're finding a pose boring or you just don't like the pose, forget about the pose and just focus on the breath. And it's so remarkable what can happen then as the posture just starts to unfold and suddenly it starts to become your favorite pose. So yes, those are my best tips. Thank you again, everyone. Let me know if you have any feedback, any comments, any questions, and I am online again in half an hour at 8 o'clock. If you fancy some guided pranayama, some yogic breathing exercises, I'm going to try and lull you off to sleep if you go to bed at 8:30 like me. If not, I'm going to get you really sleepy and relaxed for the rest of your evening. So I hope to see you there. Namaste. Leave the comments in the chat box if you do have any, guys, and I'll get back to you.